Hello, guys. I talked about, oh, this thing doesn't work. Eh, Okay, I talked about all of the pseudocoelomates we have done. And if you have any question, this is a table. It's not a very good table because on top, if you look at it, it's a prevalence of infestation. It's not infestation, it is infection. All of these are found within the host, inside of the body of the host. And that is not a good terminology. But anyhow, it's not a good thing to say. Infestation is infection. And then what happens? Trichinella, it says 1%. Yeah, I would say that's correct. Liver fluke, 1.5% maybe. So tapeworm, 3% of the population. Anyhow, I'm not going to get into how they got those 3% and so on and so forth from whatever population. But tapeworm, as you know, they do not harm their host. So that number is more, of course, that's how many has been reported. Okay, percentage of the world population infected. Here they're saying infected here, but they're saying infested here. Schistosoma 6%, yeah, interbias 10%. You got to be more than that. Okay, so and then hookworms 21% and ascaris 30%. You got to be more than that. Those are, but anyhow, you don't have to memorize those. So the next one is clade Olophochocozoan, which are the animals are bilateral symmetry. They're triploblastic. Some develop Lophophore. Lophophore is a larval stage. Okay, so when the larva is common among other phylum, like you have 4 or 5 phylum, and they have a larva right here that is common among them. So most scientists are saying maybe these variety of these phyla that evolved from, and they have a common larva, it is possible they had a common ancestor. So that's pretty much what it is. Ciliated tentacles or crown for feeding, and some have a trochophore larva, which you will see it. So the next phylum is phylum Annelida, the earthworms. The most famous one you've heard about is earthworm and leeches. They both belong to this phylum. So annelids, arthropods, and chordates are segmented animals. So only these 3 phyla, I should say, only these 3 phyla have segmentation. And chordates, for example, we are not segmented throughout our body. Our vertebral column is segmented. In case of chordates, the fishes, their muscles are a little bit segmented, and so on and so forth. And arthropods, you will see their arms and legs, their appendages they are segmented. So annelids are unique. They are segmented all the way from head to toe, a little bit. Well, you see the little bit of exceptions here and there. That would be so the term the scientists have used for segmentation is metamerism. So metamerism, it means segmentation if you encounter it anytime later on in your life. If one segment fades, the advantage of segmentation is if one segment fails, the other segments can get the function going. For example, our fingers, if one segment is cut off, we still have 2 more segments to deal with, to work with. You know, some people they remove one of their vertebrates because it's been misused and so on and so forth. Anyhow, whatever. So it is possible, same as the rest of the animal kingdom. Classification of annelids is based on segmentation. Cete, you have not had that terminology, cete, but I will show it to you guys and we'll talk about it a little bit. And clitellum, which is a portion of a reproduction, is used for reproduction as presence or absence because of those. Annuli is each ring. So if this is an earthworm, this one is one annuli, this is one annuli, this is one annuli. Okay, circular groove, which is outside of the body. So I'm sorry, this is a metamere, this is a metamere, this is a metamere, but in between they're connected together, right? In between, that's called an annuli. This is called an annuli. This is called an annuli. This is a metamere, 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 annuli, annuli, annuli. I hope I'm making some sense. And you're not. Cephalization in some species, of course, not in earthworm. So they do have, head is composed of two parts, prostomium and peristomium, followed by a segmented body. Prostomium, you should know the differences between these two. I would like you to know that prostomium may or may not be retractable. It means it comes out and in. So you will see that in sandworm. They have this head portion that comes out and goes back, just like the planaria. We studied their stomach, you know, not the stomach, their pharynx inside of the body can protrude out and back. So that's pretty much what you're talking about. So prostomium may or may not be retractable and often bears eyes, tentacles, and sensory palps. And peristomium surrounds the mouth. So that's a segment that is surrounding the mouth and may have setae, palp, or chitinous straws, which you will see later on when I talk about sandworms. Okay. So here are, you know, the animals we were talking about, the chordates, the arthropods, and of course the annelids are segmented, and I talked about that a little bit. Okay, pygidium is the last segment in these animals. They are segmented, like, for example, this is the head of the animal, this is the posterior end of the animal. So that segment, the very, very last one, is called pygidium. And then these two are not metameres. So the prostomium, what I meant, these two, I mean peristomium right here and pygidium are not segmented. They are not part of the segmentation. They're part of the animal, but they're not part of the segmentation. These two are not metameres. They're not segmented. New segments forms from in front of pygidium, opposite of, this is giving me a headache, opposite of tapeworms. You know, tapeworms, you had germinative zone around the neck, you had scolex, and you have germinative zone around here. These guys, the annelids, they grow from the end of the animal, not from beginning of the animal, not from the head region. Okay. So there are, so where is the oldest segment? The oldest segment is toward the anterior portion of the animal, toward the head of the animal. And then in tapeworms, the oldest segment was toward the end of the animals. Okay. And the newest one is toward the posterior. Coelom comes from mesoderm and schizocilus. We talked about that. Circulatory system is closed. So these are the first group of animals you're seeing that they have circulatory system. The first group of animals you're seeing that have circulatory system, and the circulatory system is closed like human. So what does that mean? It means blood always stays within a vessel, okay? So this is the heart, for example. This is the artery, takes the blood away, and it comes and branches to capillary eventually, and the capillaries to venules and back to the heart. So blood actually never leaves a vessel. That is a closed circulatory system. Open circulatory system, on the other hand, you have heart, the blood comes from artery and it goes to sinuses, the openings, and the blood goes back to vein and back to heart. So arthropods, they have mollusks, arthropods, they have open circulatory system. Okay, earthworm, they have closed circulatory system. Complete digestive system in mouth and anus. Regeneration, you cut the animal, it grows back. You saw it in planaria, and peritoneum of the adjacent segments meets to form the septa. So that's why these are coelomate animals, because of that character. And then circular muscles outside and longitudinal muscles inside. and they move by peristalsis. Peristalsis was something that I talked about at the beginning of semester in your esophagus, right? When the food goes down, the circular muscles, the peristalsis longitudinal muscles are outside, and circular muscles are inside. Circular muscles are outside, and longitudinal muscles are inside. So that's right. Circular muscles outside, longitudinal muscles inside. When these guys contract, these guys relax. So longitudinal muscles, circular muscles, and then when they're relaxing, they are tightening, so they push the food down. And then opposite of it, the food always go down. So that's how they move. So here is clitellum. So if you get an earthworm, you don't know where is the head. The mouth is the closest end that clitellum is the head part. Okay, and the anus is farthest away from clitellum. So this is a general diagram of annelids. As you can see, these are septum right here. It separates each segment. This is a metamer. You remember that? This is a metamer. And the groove between them is called annuli. Okay. And then they have some parts in the body that is continuous, like intestine, like nerve cords. Okay. If there are nerve cords here, they're continuous throughout the animal. They're not segmented, but they have kidneys. In each segment, they have kidneys. So the kidney is being segmented. Okay. So that's what segmentation means. Here it is, a cross section of the animal with parts that we talked about it quickly. Let's go over that. Cuticle, and then you have the epidermis, you have cuticle, ventral mesentery, septum. That's what it comes from, mesoderm, visceral peritoneum, and then dorsal mesentery, epidermis, of course. Okay, I'm going to circle the ones that you have to worry about. Cuticle, septum, of course, you see that in the models. And of course, we don't have dissections, but you see it in the model. Circular muscles, of course, you see that. The longitudinal muscles, circular muscles are outside, longitudinal muscles inside. Blood vessels, yeah, you will see that. Each segment is called metamer. So intestine, you will see that. Septum, you already see that. Ventral mesentery, you probably won't see that. Blood vessels, yeah, you will see that. Longitudinal muscles, again, circular muscles, epidermis, and that's about it. Intestine, and then do not worry about ventral blood vessels and dorsal blood vessels. So the first class is class Polychaeta. Poly, it means many, and chaeta, it means hair, bristle. In this case, you will see it. It is the cetate. Nereis vernus is clamworm or sandworm. Common name, sandworm, clamworm. Scientific name is Nereis vernus. And then aurincula is another called lugworm, which another species which we do not have it in the lab. It belongs to this class, class Polychaeta. So largest class, when I say largest class, it means number of species, not the size of the animals. The number of the species in this class is the largest, and they're mostly marine. And they have differentiated head, very well developed head, parapodia, pairs of appendages. You will see pictures of them. They're on the side of the animals. They will call them appendages. And all segments have it except the very first and the last one. Parapodia are biramous. It means they're branched. So parapodia is branched. That's what the term biramous means. Biramous, and you will see the picture of it in a minute. And then no clitellum and many setae. They have many setae and they do not have clitellum. Dioecious, it means sexes are separate, just like human. You have male and female, same as these organisms, unlike earthworms. Earthworms are monoecious. That would be a nice question during exam. Which of the following is the difference between earthworm and a clamworm or sandworm? Okay, of course, they're in two different classes. You will see that. But they are dioecious. Live on the rocks, burrows into the mud or sand, and tuberculous polychaetas is another organism. Everything that I said there is about nervous awareness. You should let me go back. I know my notes, I'm giving you two things, but most of these things that I said, it's about nervous awareness. But anyhow, eventually I'm coming up with another species calling it tuberculous polychaetas, which are sedentary animals and spend much of the time in permanent burrows and head, or Orthostomia has eyes, tentacles, and sedentary palps. First segment is called peristomium. We already talked about that. They have pigments such as hemoglobin, fertilization external, and larva is called trochophora, okay, which we do not have slide of. Gonads swells during some time of the year, and gametes to go to the coelom, to go to gonaduct, to go to metanephridia, to the kidney, and ruptures from there, from the body. Active at night, they're nocturnal, that's the term they use, and chitinous jaw and sensory tentacles they have. Each parapodia has 2 lobes, and I already talked about that, biramus, and dorsal notopodium and ventral neuropodium, which we'll talk about that. Both used for creeping and swimming. Okay, here is the head of the animal, right here. So in there, you can see, let's see, the jaws, okay? And then the everted pharynx, it means pharynx has been protruded out. Prostomial tentacles right here, and then palp. This is for sensation, sensing the environment. And they have the eyes. They cannot form image, but they can detect light intensity. They have tentacles, of course, in the head region. And prostomium, as I said, I will talk about it. This area, all of this is a prostomium. And then peristomium is this segment right here. Okay. So, and then the cross section of the animal, let's look at it. In the cross, this is the animal. And you do have specimen of it in the lab. Make sure you look at them. So this is the peripodium, all of it. All of this peripodium, divided in 2 parts, notopodium and neuropodium. Notopodium, if you look at it, it has a lot of capillary for respiration, respiratory capillaries. So through their cuticle, there is some respiration, okay? Then you have a saculum right here. You can see that. And a lot of setae, hair-like bristles attached to it. And of course, those setae help the animal to propel. Okay, look, they have a lot of them. Then dorsal serous, do not worry about it. Oblique muscles, yeah, on the slides you can see it. Dorsal blood vessels, yeah, I don't know. Intestine, yes, make sure you find it. Coelomic epithelium, yeah, I don't know. Do not worry about it. Longitudinal muscle, circular muscle, and then of course, you remember the term biramus? Here it is, biramus. It's branched like that. That's biramus. Okay. So epidermis, ventral blood vessels, nerve cord. Yes, you might see that, and nephridium. So ventral serous. Do not worry about ventral serous. Okay, class Oligochaeta, Lumbricus terrestris, that is your night crawler, your earthworm. Another name for this night crawlers. And then the earthworms, most are terrestrial, freshwater, some parasitic, some marine, and they have no head, no peripodia. I'm talking about that statement is for the name of the class. Okay, that statement is for the class. No head or trooper podia. Another end, anterior end has the clitellum. I already talked about that. Cetae with a few exceptions. Darwin's findings. What did Darwin found? Darwin during his time said that the earthworms are good for earth, good for soil, good for farmers. And farmers at that time, they thought earthworms are a pest. They need to get rid of them. But Darwin said, no, they're good for earth, for soil and for plants. And absolutely that was true because earthworms mix up the bottom soil with topsoil. Okay. And each segment has four pair of chitinous setae, except the first and last one. And the setae in earthworm is vestigial. Vestigial, it means it had a function in the past, but right now we don't have a function for it. So they're not allowing the animal for locomotion or for respiration, any of that you saw in Nereus vernus. Peristaltic movement, I already talked about that. Digestion, scavengers by sucking action of the pharynx. Calciferous glands. Calciferous glands is a gland that regulates the calcium level. These animals, since they eat soil, there's a lot of calcium in the soil, so they need to regulate the calcium level in the body, in the blood. So they have this structure called calciferous glands, which regulates the amount of calcium. It cannot be too high or too low. Mouth in the first in the first two segments, peristomium, and anus in the last segments, which is pygidium. Prostomium is not a segment, and it is in the anterior of the peristomium. Typhlosaur, it is the larval stages that, Typhlosaur is a fold of the intestine. Typhlosaur is a fold of the intestine that increase the surface area for the animal to absorb more nutrient. Corrugagen is like human liver. If the animal is damaged, is cut, they can regenerate. They allow the animal to regenerate. It makes fat and glycogen. Okay, these are fat and go around the wounds and regenerate the body. Circulatory system, circulation is double. It means they have heart and blood vessels. And also when the animals move, you've seen the earthworm move, right? When the animal move, the nutrient and food and waste material also goes throughout the animal, okay? Dorsal vessel runs on the top of the pharynx, anus, and I'm talking about blood vessels. Ventral vessels receives blood from the aortic arteries. Take it to the brain and rest of the body. Okay, blood has colorless amoeboid cells called corpuscles and hemoglobin. So that's what those amoeboid cells are acting like our white blood cells. So they go throughout the animal, and any unwanted bacteria or any unwanted particles, they eat it, just like our blood vessels. Excretory system, each somite has metanephridia except the first three and the last one, and metanephridia is ciliated and nephrostome is ciliated. Cilia brings waste from coelom to nephrostome to join with waste material from blood and go outside through the nephridia. Aquatic oligochaeta release ammonia, and the animals, I need to bring it to your attention for rest of semester for the final. You should know this information. Final is not cumulative, but I would like to ask these type of questions that I'm going to ask you, and I'll let you know what is final over. So the animals that are aquatic, they live in water, they release ammonia. Animals like us that live on land, they release urea. And that's the structure of urea, and that's the structure of ammonia. And that is in most cases. There could be some exceptions in the animal kingdom here and there. Okay, so aquatic oligochaeta release ammonia. Nervous system is like a ladder. Brain has neurosecretory cells and they're endocrine in function and secretes neurohormone, and function is regulation of reproduction of the and regeneration. Axon is myelinated in these animals, no eyes, but many photoreceptors in epidermis. Most defenseless organisms on planet Earth. I would like you to know that for final. Okay. Even you saw in jellyfish, they have these nematocysts that they can penetrate into the attackers. These guys do not have any system to defend themselves. Okay. Non-specialized sense organs, they do not have that. Reproductive system monoecious, but practice cross-fertilizations. Two earthworms come across and then they exchange, you know, the sperm, one transfer sperm to the other one. Female store sperms from male into seminal receptacles. That's what they call it, seminal receptacles. You see some pictures during copulations. And reproduction can happen during any season. Clitellum secretes mucus that holds the worms together. You will see that after copulation, a cocoon is formed. So the clitellum moves toward the anterior portion of the animal. And when it comes off of the animal, that is a cocoon. Okay. Fertilization takes place in the cocoon, and young adults that emerges from the eggs. Direct development, no metamorphosis. So what comes out of cocoon is a very immature earthworm, very small, and you do not have clitellum. Okay, clitellum is developed later on. Juvenile do not develop clitellum until they are adult. Okay. So here is the structure of the animal. You can maybe correlate that with the lab stuff. So let's go over here. Peristomium, as you know, we already talked about that. Oh, sorry. Peristomium, buccal cavity, you will not see these things. In the models, you see the mouth, you see the peristomium, buccal cavity, I'm not sure you see it or not. Brain, yes, you see it. Pharynx, of course, you see it. Lateral nerve cords, maybe second aortic arches. So these are all aortic arches or heart, those red lines. And then seminal vesicles, they do have testes and ovaries inside of them. So, but esophagus, of course, then you have crop and gizzard, crop, gizzard, and then intestine. Circular muscle, longitudinal muscle, and so on and so forth. Nephridium, those are kidney. You have them in each segment. Okay. Ventral vessels, subneural vessels, nerve cords, egg funnel to oviduct, and sperm funnels, and seminal receptacles. You remember I talked about that. Seminal receptacles, they receive sperm from another earthworm when they do cross-fertilization. Here's a clitellum. After copulation, it moves toward the anterior portion of the animal. These are setae, which the function of it is vestigial. Here's a cross-section of the animal. So these are setae. They have 4 pairs of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Typhlosol is the fold of the intestine. Intestinal lumen. So that lumen is right there. So that space is called coelom. It's not pseudocoelom anymore. These are coelomic animals. That's the lumen of the intestine right there. And corrugated cells, the yellow layer outside. And epithelial cells are inside, intestinal epithelial cells. Ventral vessels, subneural, ventral nerve cords, nephridium, yes. Longitudinal muscles, circular muscles, epidermis, cuticle, peritoneum. That is why these animals are coelomate animals, because peritoneum came from, that's a septum, it came from mesoderm. Okay, here's showing you the structure of CTA and all of the muscles attached to it. Not too crazy. Here is showing you copulation when male and female come together, and of course the clitellum moves toward the anterior portion of the animal and becomes cocoon. More than one worm inside of the cocoon. Class Hirudinea, your leeches, Hirudinea medicinalis. I don't know, you've seen the pictures that somebody cut their fingers, they put leeches after the surgeon puts it back, they put leeches on the top, or ears, they put leeches in here. So they suck the blood around the wound, around the blood vessels, so it releases the pressure, so the blood vessels heal faster, easier. Mainly freshwater leeches, black, brown, red, olive green, and then force their pharynx or proboscis into the soft tissue and suck blood, saw-like chitinous jaws, and temporary or permanent ectoparasite, of course. Have clitellum appear only during breeding seasons, and they are hemiphagic. It means they are monoecious. No appendages or setae, and anterior and posterior suckers. They have two suckers, anterior right here. So they have a sucker on this end, and they have a sucker on that end. That's is the largest leech that he's showing you. Distinct coelomic, okay, usually have 34 segments. Distinct coelomic compartment. Coelom is found around gonads. Septa disappears except in one species. Lacuna is coelom, which is filled with connective tissue. So we cannot call this animal that is acoelomate. This animal is eocoelomate, is not acoelomate because of that sentence right there, the lacunae, which is a connective tissue, fills up. They do have coelom, empty space around gonads, around heart, around other structures, unlike their cousins, which is the earthworm and the Nereospermus. They feed on almost species, so all of the species from human to insects have some kind of leech. The leech that, just like tapeworms, for example, the leech that go ahead and feed on insects, it probably will not harm human. Okay. Monoecious, but practice cross-fertilization, no larval stage, gas exchange only through skin, aquatic ones in the gills. And here they are. Let's go back. I don't know what I said. The world's largest leech, as he gave you the name. Okay, so they have a sucker on this end, and a sucker on that end, a sucker on this end, and a sucker on that end. And they're sucking the blood after the person has cut their toe or nail, whatever, not the nail, the ear. So the surgeons put the blood vessels together. So the accumulation of the blood are outside here. Then they put the leech on top and you suck the blood from outside. Here is the ears, and here's the fingers, and so on and so forth. Evolutionary points, coelom and metamerism may have evolved independently, and mollusks, annelids, and arthropods have many similarities that they might have a common ancestor. Okay, so that would be the end of the material for this phylum. We still have mollusks to talk about, and that would be the end of the material for exam number 4.